Hello, welcome to my first ToonBoom tutorial. Don't expect these to be super duper expert tutorials because I am not an expert in what I do. Even though I've been using ToonBoom for years, there's still a lot of things I do not know about the program. For example, master controllers, no idea. But if, but this tutorial will just simply be going over all the tools. Not all of them, but most of them actually. I lied. So the first two tools that you want to learn is the brush tool and the pencil tool. Okay, I modified the settings a little bit, but basically these tools are almost identical except they have one difference when you use a tool. When you use two tools, which are the eraser and the counter editor. See, I looked there. With the brush, it creates shapes when you draw. So you can change the shapes like that. So that's how the brush works. With the pencil tool, you're creating lines with points or contours that you can edit, and you could do this, you could do that if you click on the line. You can move it, you could add points, I think. Well, pencil tool is my favorite go-to for making line art. So that's those two. And with the brush, if you could edit the shape, of course, but with the pencil tool, a good tool that you'd want to know is the pencil editor, because the pencil editor allows you to change the thickness like that. This is pencil tool in essentials is always gonna have like it's gonna be like that, but in anything higher than essentials, you'd be able to do things. You'd be able to use the pencil tool a lot better. So next up is the black cursor tool. Or the select tool, whatever you want to call it. The select tool allows you to select things and to modify them. You can modify the shape. You could rotate them if you go to like these corners here. So that's that. And when you select something, if you go into tool properties can be in a different place, but if you want to add it, you could go into Windows, click on tool property, and drag it over to wherever you want it to be, and you can snap it into different locations, which is something nice about ToonBoom. So basically, when you select things, you could do all these operations, like flip horizontal, you could smooth things out, you could do all this stuff. You could look up what all of these things are. You could hover. You typically hover over things to get a general idea too. And then you could also, with pencil tools, if you could change the maximum size and the minimum size and all that stuff. So that's cool. And you could also change the texture too. You could, with the pencil tool, you could also change the texture as you do it. If to do that, you go into here, and then there's also a place called texture, and then there's all these different textures. Now, one thing that I should probably go over the pencil tool in a little more detail. You could, if you go to tool properties, you could change the maximum size. So some people want thicker lines than others. Some people like really thin lines, whatever your preference is. Oh yeah, you could also, in size, you could change the minimum size. If you do not like the size changing, you could have that at that. If you want size changing, you can put it at like a really low number. I like it really low. Some people like it up here or something. I just like it as low as I could get it. So, because I like being able to do things like that, So great for hair. That's a pencil tool. And then there's the eraser tool. Eraser tool basically allows you to erase things. One thing that you should know, big difference between brush and pencil, is that when you use the erase tool, it kind of has a different effect when you kind of do the same thing. So like, I'm just gonna try to draw. Let me get rid of this texture. If I'm doing this thing and I see right there, see that little edge there, that's something that the pencil tool has, because it's not as smooth as the brush. If I use the eraser, it's pretty much completely smooth with the brush, but if I use it on the pencil, you see as you zoom in, there's all these little jaggedy things here, which, because I'm usually making line art, it's not a problem, but it's something that I thought was worth talking about. There's also the text tool. Text tool basically works like any text tool, font, bold. It's not insanely intense. If you're confused on it, you should probably look it up. There's the shape tools, basically like the pencil tools, except you're just dragging and making shapes. You could change the size. There's also polyline, which I don't know. Now, there's also a good thing to think about is the paint bucket tool. There's a lot of things going on with the paint bucket tool. So, with the paint bucket tool, it's really great in ToonBoom because you could just paint things really easy by going into colors, and you could just instant. It's like that. The way colors work is that it's a palette. So if you change any color, it changes it throughout the project. Now, if you want to add new colors, you hit plus. And one thing to remember is to hit the H here. It's not on automatically, but this is, for me, it's the best thing to work with making new color palettes and all that stuff. You could also tint the entire panel here. There's offset, blend, mixer, all that stuff. You could mess around with that. So paint bucket tool. The paint bucket tool, there's multiple important tool, 4, maybe 3. Paint unpainted, stroke, and close gap. I usually just use paint unpainted, and stroke. Paint is just like a regular paint bucket tool, but one thing paint bucket tool can't do that paint unpainted cannot is when you're painting something. If you drag like that, it paints the entire thing. However, with paint unpainted, it doesn't paint things that are already painted. So if I drag like that, the lines are unaffected. This could be really useful in a lot of scenarios. There's also, see how there's this little gap here? If I wanted to fill it in, I can't. But with stroke, and you have to hit K to look at them, there's these blue lines, and these are basically strokes. If I close this up, boom. It's also really great for shading too, so if I want to have 2 colors but no outline, I could just do that. Alternatively, if I didn't want to do that though, I could use a color that I'm never going to use, take the pencil tool, and then fill it in like that. Black cursor, use this red cursor, which just selects everything that is one color, and then I could delete that. That took a lot of explaining to do, so maybe it's sometimes better to use the stroke tool. But I just wanted to put it out there because it might be better for some people. Yeah, and then there's also close gap, which basically is kind of the same thing as stroke, except more limited in a way. Basically what it does is it just makes anything you fill in a straight line, whereas with stroke, there's the shape is maintained. So that's, some people might like to use that. I don't find myself using that most of the time. Then there's the eyedropper tool here. Eyedropper tool, you could just eyedrop any color. This is useful for frame by frame painting. Drawing pivot, I don't use morphing. Sometimes I use, but it's complicated. Hand, just click space and move around like this. You could use the scroll wheel to zoom in. Move around like that. Don't overcomplicate things. Animate current frame. Usually you should have this on. I haven't had a single time where I didn't want it on, so keep it on. Transform tool, this is about animating, but I could go over this in a different video. Kinematic, inverse kinematics isn't in essentials, and it's complicated and it can be janky sometimes, so I'm not covering it. And then there's onion skin, which is useful for animating. Sometimes you can have it on, sometimes you don't want to have it on. Onion skin, basically, there's this timeline, and if you move around, as you can see, the red stuff is things in the past, and the green stuff is things in the future. I think you could change the colors. I haven't bothered to. I don't care. You could also click on the green and red things here in the timeline to stretch things out if you want to go through further link from the past and the future. And that's how you use onion skin. Hopefully this was a good tutorial about the tools. If anyone wants any more information, you can leave a comment, or I might make another video. Hopefully this was good.